see. All right, hi there, Siobhan Lindley here. We are here today with Jodi McPherson. Did I say that correctly?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, perfect. She is a self-proclaimed director of fun over at Pearson. Others happen to call her the architect of ideas, someone who really possesses the unique ability to combine both vision and leadership. And after getting to know her a little bit myself, before pushing record, I'd also like to say that she has a very acute ability to own her voice, and something that I strive every day to try and do myself. And what I learned from her in just a little brief time, I'm excited to share a part of her story, or have her share a part of her story with you today, because it seems she knows exactly when to speak up and when it's time to listen. So would you say that that's kind of an accurate description of you and your background a little bit, just a little blurb?
I think that's great. You're very gracious. I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
So what's your technical title at Pearson?
My technical title is Vice President of Career Development and Employability.
Okay. So what does that mean?
My mom asked me too. It means that I work on all things related to student and career success. So helping students K through 20 get to school, have success in school, understand strategies for success, and then ultimately get on a career path to the things they want to do that match their aspirations. And I bring that from Pearson's point of view into the schools through a variety of products and services and solutions.
So how were you able to figure out that this is what you were meant to do? Because it's very evident by, I mean, just look at her LinkedIn profile if you have a moment, because it's the most beautifully drafted, personality infused, but just like perfect bio and background to just look at. But it's definitely evident that you're very passionate about your career path. So how did you end up at Pearson? Because you've been there a really long time.
I have been here actually a long time, and I'm very grateful. Pearson's a great place to be. And so what's kind of funny about the LinkedIn, and thank you, because I worked really hard at that. It took me a long time to be able to articulate, what I really liked about what I did. And I think that's something that's hard to do anyways. But when I went to college in 1983, this goes back a ways, NC State was in the tournament, if you recall. And I'm saying this because March Madness is going on too. And a little known team from North Carolina that really had no business winning kind of caught my attention because they were the ultimate underdog. And I ended up going to school at NC State. But then as I approached my career, what I found myself falling in love with was stories of the underdog, or areas where people said you can't do it. And they said you should just give up on that. We can't fix that. It's not going to work. And I just found myself gravitating to those situations and saying, actually, I think we can do this. And it was a lot of fun, because when you're in those situations, there's nothing but upside. And if you have the right group of people and the right talent, it's a lot of fun, but it's also really motivating. And it gets you out of bed in the morning, and it keeps you coming back for more, because you're ultimately always trying to prove that you can do it, and do what, to me, to do what others say is not possible was the ultimate kind of goal. And it didn't really matter what the project was, as much as it being worthy of attention. And of course, having students have success, especially now with 2 kids growing up, 1 in high school, it's urgent for me to do this stuff really well, and I don't say that lightly. I think these kids and people today need a lot of guidance and help in order to achieve their own goals. And so I really like being a part of that.
What does a typical day look like for you?
It's funny. I thought about this a lot, and I do a lot of listening. I have a lot of meetings, unfortunately, but in those meetings, I spend a lot of time listening and talking to customers, and talking to people on our team, and talking to students. And they're almost like mini interviews, on different scenarios and situations. And one of the things in my day-to-day that I really try to focus on is 2 things really, but how can we kind of use our daily activities to reach our outright goals? And I think that's a challenge in corporations and big business, because there's these big goals that seem far away. But every day in these meetings and talking to customers, you have to try to extract the pieces that are going to help you make really good decisions. So that's one thing I try to focus on every day. And I also really try to give people my full attention in those meetings and situations so I can help people see where we're going so they can internalize it and then bring more to it. And so these meetings really are orchestrated with customers and students. Students are our customers, and people on the teams, all in line with getting to our ultimate goal, which is to put things right in the hands of students and people who are trying to grow. So while it's a lot of meetings, to me, it's a lot of people interaction, which I thoroughly enjoy. And I think that it's a lot of decision making around investment and priorities. I would say that's the number one thing we have to decide, because you can't do it all at one time. So at some point you have to decide what's most important and what's urgent versus what's important. And they're not always the same. And we're always looking for to reach our goals daily, weekly, monthly. I know that sounds kind of cliche, but it's really not. When you've got big plans to go as the underdog, you've got to have a game plan and be able to execute on it every day.
So the things that you are a part of and the responsibility that you have, it definitely seems like it takes a lot of courage to have to speak up, because sometimes you have to say things that maybe is an unpopular viewpoint, or maybe isn't what the rest of the team wants, but you see it differently because you've had such an experience. And so what are some signs for you that you need to speak up?
It's funny. I am often called unpredictable, because even though we've got a game plan, I think one of the things, this took me a long time to learn and I'm still learning, but I would say there are two things. One is, if in your gut something feels uncomfortable, then it's on you inside anyways to start unpacking why that's uncomfortable. Because to me, discomfort can be a good thing if you're learning about, in a situation, another point of view that wasn't the way you thought it was going to be, or different. I think that's important, and that can drive you to get clarity with people that you work with. Clarity is something that I think we all take for granted, is to have clarity when you're discussing things with people in a group. So I think when you have that uncomfortable kind of feeling, you have to decide, do I need more clarity so that I can understand? Because healthy disagreement is really important. And it doesn't have to be a controversy. It can actually move things forward, or it can cause you as a group to pause, right? So an uncomfortable feeling requires clarity, or to me, an uncomfortable feeling could say, this doesn't feel like the direction we were going, and I'd like to know, has our direction changed? And to me, when one of those two things kind of happen when I'm sitting around, I really, in my head, I think through and I pause to say, why is that happening? And then try to figure out the best words for me to ask for either clarity or to voice, this feels like we're going down a different path. The thing I'll tell you about in business right now that I found, we used to make decisions or have choices, and you just stay on that path no matter what. And now technology is such a disruption in many ways, and positive and negative, that you can't just stay on that path no matter what. So it's okay to question the path, as long as it's in line with getting everybody aligned with understanding if there's been a shift or a pivot. So to me, it's just a good old comfortable gut feeling, and not really taking it personal, but just figuring out, what do you need, more clarity, or has something really changed?
Mm-hmm. But the courage to say those words.
You have to be, it's funny, you have to be a little dispassionate. I mean, I'm a feisty person anyways, and I think that's what makes me me. So I've learned to channel that passion. But I think you have to be respectful of people. The older I get, it does come down to treat others like you want to be treated. If you've got a point of view, I encourage folks on our team, and I've got a great team of people, great thinkers, very passionate, very talented. We should be able to disagree with each other in a respectful way. In fact, I tell my daughter that, my 14-year-old, I'm like, you've got to be able to disagree with people respectfully, because different point of views make you better and stronger. And from a sales and marketing kind of perspective, as a business person, you want to be the one kind of poking holes in things and figuring out where there's going to be drawbacks so that you can address them before your product or your solution goes to market, right? I mean, it's in everyone's best interest to have these hearty conversations, though they're uncomfortable. And to me, you've got to have a lot of just inner strength, not take things personal, and just choose your words wisely, because words can come out in a lot of ways. I don't put things on email that are going to solicit feedback in a negative way. So try to be really constructive. And it is just treat others like you want to be treated. You can have a different opinion if you're respectful about it and open to feedback both ways. it goes a long way. I'm not saying I always did that in my life and career, but I'm getting better at it. And it certainly goes a lot further than the alternative.
When you have this gut feeling and those emotions, because it's always been my telltale sign. I mean, I start sweating profusely. I like want to throw up, and I'm like, I've got to get out of this situation. And I'm like, no, that means you have to say something. You don't have a choice. You must say something. But sometimes I find myself, it's difficult. I start focusing on my feelings and my thoughts and what I'm going to say versus really trying to listen to what the people are saying. So how have you been able to, do you have any tricks that you've used to try and stay focused on the conversation at hand without getting caught up in, body reactions and kind of emotional reactions to the information that you're receiving?
Yeah, it's a really important thing. I did not do this well early in my career, and arguably on days I don't do this well, but I've had really great mentors. I'll say that. I've been very fortunate. And one of them gave me probably the best advice ever, was about hitting the pause button and resetting. And what she was really telling me was how to be an active listener. And she's like, you're spending so much time focusing on how to respond or the fact that it's making you uncomfortable. You're not even really paying attention. And so I really work hard at being present in the moment and putting away distractions. And I think for me on the emotional side, it's hitting that pause button, taking a breath and realizing it is okay to disagree, and it is okay to even be feisty about it. It's just not okay to be disrespectful, and it's not okay not to say anything. It's not okay. You don't have to hide that. You just have to learn how to channel it in a way that's effective for everyone. And ultimately, the reason for that, by the way, from a business perspective, to me, and a personal one, is compromise and learning how to listen and making others feel heard and feeling heard yourself. It takes a lot of effort on both parties to do that well, and they will respond twofold to your kindness and generosity when you do that. And I think that's when I started to see that come back with people. You get the best out of everyone. So it really is hitting the pause button. I do actually say those words, kindness, generosity, respectful, in my head, because I think then I know. And, I can hear my father in my head saying, this is how you have to be. And all it takes is that kind of reminder, and you'll stay with it, and you'll just pause and take a breath. And sometimes that's all you need.
You mentioned a couple of times that you didn't do this so well, maybe in your earlier years, maybe where you didn't, where you spoke up and maybe didn't go so well or whatever it may be. Can you tell me about one of those situations and how you handled it and what went down?
Well, yeah, it's funny. It feels like it happened yesterday, but I was new to Pearson. It was Prentice Hall Pearson at the time. And there was a big, big budget meeting with my boss's boss and her boss and our business manager, probably 18 people sitting around a long oval table. And our CEO at the time asked myself and my boss how we thought we were going to do this calendar year. And without even thinking or unprompted, I just kind of shout out, oh, we're going to miss big. And at that moment, it felt like every single person at the table physically pushed away from the table. And here I was sitting there on an island on this big table with my boss's boss looking at me, glaring at me. And I was like, oh God, what do I do now? And he proceeded to grill me as to why I thought what I thought. And, I answered his questions. And at that point, I was very nervous and uncomfortable, of course. And, I basically said, I think you're going to have about a $4 million miss, which in retrospect, we ended up missing close to that. But I just kind of blurted it out, and I didn't know how to lead up to it. And I certainly did not treat him or anybody else on that table who'd been working on this product line for years with the kind of respect I would want. It was, in retrospect, fairly careless, though I'm laughing about it, because these people I'm still friends with, because they were mentors to me and I learned from it. And after that, I can remember thinking, oh my gosh, I've just ruined my career. But it really was the first time I'd stopped and reflected on something, and it wasn't all that bad. It felt worse than it was, but it was a really good lesson about how to really manage a room of people you're talking to, and how to figure out ways to say what you want to say without being disrespectful, intentionally or unintentionally. By the way, half the time people are not even intentionally trying to be that way. They're just conveying their point of view in a way that feels that. But, when everyone pushed away, I realized I had to figure it out on my own, and it was on me, to do that. So then I went and sought advice and asked people what they thought of it. That was also very difficult. And I had to take a good look in the mirror and say, hey, listen, you can do better than that. And I knew I had more in me. I needed to really be ready to hear that. And I think for me, that was in retrospect, a defining moment. Though I can laugh about it now, I wasn't laughing. And that was almost 15 years ago.
How would you approach that situation differently if it were to happen today?
Well, I think the one thing I would do is I would pause and I would say, and I would give people respect who are around me because I was new to Pearson at that time. And I would say, you guys, I know how much work has gone into what's been done. And I would probably acknowledge people directly with eye contact and face to face. So they knew that I was talking to them and acknowledging work that had been done. And I wouldn't do that to qualify what I was saying because that's different sometimes. I would do it to acknowledge the work and effort and to acknowledge what I'm coming into and say, from my perspective, here's where I think we might fall short. And I would probably give a few examples of why I thought that before I would say, oh, and by the way, you're going to miss. And I would be a lot less careless about that. And, I thought about this a lot. I wouldn't qualify it, but I would just be respectful for the people and the effort that's been done to date. And I would give rationale to it. And I think about this a lot more now, Siobhan, as a parent and how you would talk to your kids and how I talk to my 14-year-old daughter. You can't just drop bombs on people. It's not fair. It's hard. But yet you have to be authentic and genuine and sincere, just not dropping a bomb on people. And I do think about that. That's the one thing I would do different. And so it might take me maybe a minute to get to the point I was trying to make versus a second.
But that's okay, right? That's how you build relationships and trust and all of that. So it was really, really wonderful. And I know, you've really grown through different positions in your career path and taken different roles on. And I think you even mentioned that you were accurate. You were fairly accurate in your diagnosis of where the company was at. And that was a big moment for you in your career path because you were acknowledged for that later on down the road. So tell me about that moment.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting because I came into Pearson at a point and a lot of folks in the area was really underperforming. It was in IT publishing and undergraduate, which 20 years ago, before Microsoft was Microsoft, nobody had any idea what a disruptor role technology would play and what upside it would bring to education. It was really the unknown. And in retrospect, there were two things that were interesting about that meeting. One was I wasn't afraid to say that we were going to miss, even by a significant amount, because I was so sure the upside was there. So to me, that was a big deal for my personal career because I was one of the few people willing to say, the upside is there. Don't worry about your miss. Look forward. And to me, that's been a defining mentality of my career of taking over underdeveloped areas and saying the future is here. We need to focus on it because you have to put the past behind you, recognize it for what it is. So that was one piece. I think the other piece, when I think about why I made my career, and it really did, was I could decipher the problem. See, when I was there, a lot of people I was working with kept saying that it was a sales problem. You needed a dedicated sales group to do what I was suggesting could be done. And I kept saying, you don't. You need a better product and story. And with a better product and story, you're going to have more, upside. It's like starting with why, right? When you know why you're doing this, you're going to have more upside. And that was really contradictory. So between those two things, it wasn't really about the $4 million miss. It was about the future, and it was about how to get hold of it. And I went out there and kind of went out on a limb, a little bit on my own, and said, hey, this is what I think we should do. And then, of course, we crafted a plan. And then, within about 5 years, Pearson was a $100 million publisher in IT. That was a big deal. When we were at 9 million and we weren't able to figure out what to do. And then not just me, we had a great team of people. In fact, arguably one of the best teams I've ever worked on. I'm still friends with, and what an amazing ride we had to turn that around.
And you're still, to this day, looking at the organization as an underdog, even though it's the world's, leading education company. And And I think that that's been such a gift to have that viewpoint and that lens to view the organization, because it's always about improvement. Um, and so you've really created these processes and these strategies in place that have really served you well. And, you know, in the beginning, maybe with not as much, you know, softness or as much, you know, respect, but you still followed your gut, no matter what. And obviously that has served you really well. Are there any other processes or strategies that you use that help you get your ideas that you know need to happen? How do you get them implemented? Right? How do you go from, you know, you've convinced, but then what the implementation side, do you have a process or strategy?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's two big pieces to that. One is it's always an and proposition with people. A lot of times when people have ideas, they want it to be their own idea and they don't want to share it. And I think when you have really good ideas, if you want to execute great things, you have to share it openly and let whatever happens. And that is a big deal because it's your idea, right? It's your baby, and you've got to trust people to internalize it. And I think that's a key. And I think you have to be willing to let people dig in and take as much time as they need while shepherding them along the path to internalize it, so that you can, it's bigger with people if you surround yourself with talent and smart people who are really passionate, the idea you have will only get bigger and better with their input, their contributions, their ability to internalize it. It's never a one-person deal. And I think what I've learned over time is the more that you surround yourself with great people who do jobs that you may not do really well, and who can disagree with you and who can help look at ideas and point you in the right direction and allow them to dig in and internalize it, then it really works. But I'll tell you the one key in addition to that I think people kind of take lightly or whatever, they don't want to have fun. You know, they want to do all this and have it be a grind. And I'm telling you, when you're telling people that you've got a great idea and you're going to go from nothing to something and you're going to be the underdog, you better have fun with it, or they're not going to stick around, because we all have lives, you know, and we have things that are happening. And as passionate as you are, I like to wake up and have fun with people. And I like to work with people who take it seriously, but also take our personal lives as seriously as our professional lives. I just, finding that balance and allowing people to dig in and internalize, to me, is the key to success of any idea, of taking it forward, because the path and the journey is a long one. And you got to have people who are going to stick with it even when times get tough. And that only comes from people who are fully vested in it, just like you are.
Wow, that's a wonderful way to think. I've never thought about it in that element of how important it is to making sure that your vision can be seen throughout all of its journey, you know, from the idea to fruition at the end. You know, you need to be able to take care of yourself and know that you're honoring all parts of you, yeah, and that being a critical business element. So throughout your career, you've had you know, opportunities of growth and promotion. And there was at one point in time, and you've mentioned now, I mean, you have children, they're a little older now, still in the house, though, almost, right? But then when they were young at home and you were given an opportunity for a promotion and you had to decide what was right for you in that moment, can you tell me a little bit more about what was going on for you then?
Yeah, I mean, my daughter was really young. I have two kids now; they're 14 and 11, and I love what I do. I love the team I work with. I love traveling and being with customers and being with students. I think that's the best part of what we do at Pearson. And you know, but she grew up, her first year, I missed a lot of it because I was traveling. And I just woke up one day. We lived in New York at the time, and she started walking. And she had already been walking, but I had missed her initial walk. For me, it was still the first one. And I remember thinking to myself, you know, as great as what I was doing is, and I love being a mom and I love my job, so I was really torn. And it was really a brutal time. Anyone who's a working parent yourself, it's a real challenge to do both and feel like you're doing both well. And that's when I started on this and proposition. And I said, the only way for me to do a good job at both is I've got to be able to do my job as a mom really well and do my job for Pearson and for students well. So how do I do that? And I decided at that point that I wanted to try to move to a location where I could work off site, which meant I couldn't really manage people and do the things that were ahead of me. And that was okay because I liked managing ideas and I wanted to be a mom and I wanted to contribute to the goals that I had set out with Pearson and my professional life. And I thought by moving away, I can do a little bit of both, right? I can travel, but I can also be home and be present. And, it was not an easy, that was not an easy part of the journey, but in retrospect, I feel like it's made me better in all ways. And, from my perspective, the professional stuff came later, and I kept doing what I loved doing and kept working on underperforming areas and markets. At the same time, I got to see my daughter and now my son. My daughter's in high school, and we have spent a lot of time together. They've traveled with me for business. We were just talking about that. And I really appreciate it. I'm very, very grateful to have the opportunity to do both. And I think for me, it was also the decision that was okay to do both and that I didn't give up either or. And I also didn't give up a future at a higher level necessarily for that. I just said, I'm just going to table that for a little bit. And it's a quandary that a lot of parents will have, but I feel like very fortunate that I had an opportunity to do that.
In an organization that seemed to support you through that decision and allow that structure to exist. Once you knew what it is that you needed, that you were able to communicate that, and then the organization was able to say, you've been probably as valuable as you are, we want you, and no matter how that looks, we want you to be a part of the team.
I think Pearson's been great. Pearson is a really balanced organization. I've had some great mentors and some great people who have influenced my life personally and professionally, and I am grateful for that. But as an organization, we really try to do that because it is about people. Ultimately, it's about people, and people come for people, they stay for people. And so it was nerve-wracking though to have that ask, but I really feel fortunate. And I think it helped me grow because in retrospect, I really needed some growth. And as I said earlier, my career was a little different. We can all keep getting better, but I think it afforded me an opportunity to work with different teams and do some things that made me better.
What advice do you have for other, rising female leaders who may be struggling with the idea of how to get their voice or their ideas implemented at work? I mean, you talked about a lot of really wonderful strategies today, but is there any other advice that you might want to add?
I think you just have to be authentic with who you are and respectful. I think the authenticity piece, people, listen, there's a lot going on, and a lot of times everyone wants to qualify why you have such statements. And when you're authentic and you talk from a position of self-confidence, it's okay for people to disagree with you. And it's also okay for you to be disagreed with publicly, right? And to me, that just comes from being who you are, being confident, and being respectful to people. And in my travels, I respond well to people that do that for me and with me. And I mirror that. And I find the same goes true when I try to be respectful and talk to people. And I really work hard on listening too, because when you do, you allow everyone to voice their perspective. You allow them to feel like you're really hearing them. You have to be legitimate and do that. But I think if you want to be heard, authenticity and being respectful and generous and kind with your feedback and with your listening is by far the easiest pathway, and it's not always easy to execute on, but it's certainly pretty easy to get people to say, yeah, if you do that, I'm going to spend a little more time with you.
Well, there's so much compassion in that. And, I think that's a very natural characteristic that most women have within us. And, some for many, many different reasons, maybe we're told that's not the way that you do business, but you have found particularly, and I know I've learned it too, that when we can have that level of compassion and thoughtfulness and be able to weave that into our day-to-day working life, that's how we figure, that's how we're able to be authentic, right? That's when we are able to be truly ourselves. And so thank you so much for spending a little bit of time with us here today. And if anyone is interested, the articles is going to be out soon. By the time you see this footage, it will already be out. So you may have some questions in regards to that didn't get answered that you would love to talk to Jodi about. So I want you to join us for a Facebook Live. I'll be announcing it on my page, Siobhan Lindley, so you can follow me there, and we'll be announcing when that Facebook Live will happen. So then you are the director of the questions. You're going to curate them for me, and Jodi's going to get them answered for you. So I'd love for you to, whatever comes up for you, if you have a situation or whatever, obviously you can tell she's going to be able to give you some really wonderful advice. So send them in on Facebook and message us over, and we'll make sure and get those answered for you during a live interview. So thank you, Jodi. You've been with Pearson for 20 years now, and I know that you've already done so many things, and I'm sure you have other big goals in mind. So what's up next for you?
Well, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you for the time today too. We are working on, this is very exciting. All the work that we've been doing on student success, we're putting into an app called Orion that is designed to help students of any age, could be returning students or high school students, prioritize their goals and align their goals and aspirations with their strategies to have success in both school and their careers. And we're very excited about that. That should be out in about 6 months. And like I said, the urgency for me is watching my own kids get to high school and trying to say, hey, listen, you can do this, and here's some tools and strategies on how to do that. And of course, everyone carries their phone around, so we've got to put it in a mobile device, and that's what we're doing.
That's exciting. And you're like, I've got a timeline. My daughter is close to college. And
that's right. Can't wait to get it. They're going to be my test cases, for better or for worse.
Okay, well, thanks so much. I'm Siobhan Lindley. Check out my other articles. You can follow me on Forbes. And thanks so much. This is rising leader Jodi McPherson of Pearson. So thanks, and we'll see you for the next interview.